Well, welcome back, everyone. My name is Jon Uhler, and this is Journey to Healing. We are in the midst of a series on introducing a new counseling model. Myself and a collaborator named Diana. Diana and I are introducing a new model of therapy for those that have been on the receiving end of the most heinous kind of abuse. So this is a trauma-informed model which really builds upon the success of IFS, though we have very unique and specific differences, and we introduced those differences in part one. In part two, we're going to be looking at what you should be looking for in terms of a people helper or a therapist. If you are looking for help, who should you look for, and what should their background and training be? We also touch a little bit about my background so people can get a sense of who I am. We address some issues out there as far as those that are pro-pedophile pushing policy individuals, especially within the LGBTQ realm, who have worked overtime to try to give people the impression that I either don't have any background in this field or that I shouldn't be listened to. So we address that. I think that's important. That needs to be put up front. So we address that, and then we also look at the subject of ritualistic abuse. Is it actually real? Is it a thing? Has it been around a while? And what is it? And then what is SRA, satanic ritual abuse? We will also be touching on the subject matter of MK Ultra. Both topics, by the way, you can do a simple search in YouTube and you will find a lot of information about that. But we will be looking at the impact of those two subjects specifically, because Diana was impacted by that. And then we're going to hear a little bit more about her story and what difference IHC, this model, has made for her in terms of her healing and her overall adjustment. So we're excited to pick it up at part two, and we will start that in just a moment.
Welcome to Journey to Healing. Do you find yourself discouraged, troubled, in need of healing, but not sure where to turn? Jon Uhler, a licensed professional counselor, is here to help. Jon has more than 30 years of professional experience, helping people deal with the issues that keep them emotionally and spiritually stuck. There is help. There really is hope. There is a God who loves you, who wants to help you find peace and strength. And Jon Uhler is here to help you find that on this edition of Journey to Healing.
Diana, welcome back, and more than welcome back. It's great to be working with you, and it's a privilege to do this series that we're doing together.
The privilege for me as well. Thank you.
Well, we'll get underway. Part one, if people haven't seen it, we recommend people go back and view part one. It kind of sets the stage for what is IHC, internal healing and collaboration, and why is there the need for that? What sets it apart? We'll still be developing that, certainly, so people can understand the difference. We really are capitalizing upon the good work that IFS has done, but there are some important differences, not the least of which we come from a Christian orientation, a solidly biblical perspective. It doesn't mean that those who aren't Christians can't benefit. We actually recommend everybody review this material, but the level of harm that is being perpetrated in the area that we're talking about, that you experienced, what's called SRA, satanic ritual abuse, and MK Ultra, really is best dealt with and can only be dealt with ultimately from a Christian perspective, because there are very deep questions and people have been harmed at a very deep level, including spiritually. So unless they have truth to combat what happened to them, they're going to have they're not going to be able to get through it. Any thoughts about what I said? And then we'll launch into the part two, which is really who are we? What is our backgrounds, and also the science behind the field of trauma therapy. So we'll look at that today. But any thoughts?
Just that, yeah, addressing the biblical aspect, I found for me is enormous because it was so twisted and contorted and used as a weapon to keep me away from God, Jesus, and the Bible. So it has to be addressed.
And IFS does not purport to be, it deals with the quote unquote spiritual, but from sort of a generic and an energy level and new age
Yeah, yeah.
perspective. And so it really cannot help then with those in situations where people have been subjected to horrific evil by those that are Satanists.
Yeah, and specifically using the Bible and Christianity and Jesus as a weapon. It has to be addressed.
And that's
All
the
right.
key. Okay, without any further ado, Diana, we will get into put together a continuation of the PowerPoint. I will bring that up. We're going to see a video clip here eventually where you'll be able to share firsthand what kind of trafficking you experience. As people can tell over on the left, there's a number of little thumbnails, and I will, let's see if I can.
What verifiable professional and educational background do they have?
And what we're doing, my apologies, let me go back here. So at the outset of part two, we're making a case for the importance of survivors to work with somebody that has adequate knowledge in this, that is trained, has background training and experience in helping someone, as well as then we'll talk about the veracity of what you experienced, but also trauma in general. But it's very important at the outset for someone to understand who is it that they're working with, because there's a whole lot of people out there. Diana, you were trying to find somebody. As a matter of fact, you were referencing just before we went on the air that you had been, I'm going to move that over, that you had been looking for someone.
Well, actually, I wasn't. I had, throughout my life, learned that the psychiatric and psychological industry were corrupted, basically, in various different ways. And so I was just trying to figure it out on my own. And I happened to see your interview with Emma on the Imagination podcast, and your series of 7 videos on DID. And after I got through, I think all of them, maybe a majority of them, I looked at the screen. I said, I want him. I want him. Because because you don't advocate hypnosis, you don't advocate drugging, you didn't advocate all of the things that the psychiatric industry or the psychological industry do. And I knew that you were a Christian and you were going to bring that piece of the pie in. And at the time, I had no idea I even needed that, but it just felt right. So I think my choice, I wouldn't recommend it, but I would recommend Jon highly. But I didn't research him. I didn't, I wasn't looking. I was just going to try and figure it out on my own. And so I would say these recommendations that Jon is about to put up are very important, unless you want to just go straight to Jon, like I did. But
And we're not, this is not a push for that. But
yeah, yeah. No, it's not a push for that, but just that.
Yeah, it is a push for our model, right? That we're introducing, but
just that I didn't. I was not going to go anywhere near the psychiatric industry at all because I knew their techniques and their failure rate, and I didn't want to go that route. I was just going to do it by myself. And when I saw you and you explained the DID and how it works and when a memory pops up, and my intuition was like, yeah, that feels right. And then we had our consultation and began, and I knew right away that you were the right person. So.
Well, I'm glad. Okay. Well, without any further ado, then, yeah, what should somebody, in our
Yeah, look for
estimation,
it.
my estimation, what should somebody look for? And
What is their theoretical orientation? What populations have they worked with, and for how long? Do they have formal schooling and training? Do they have proof of specialized training? If they claim to come from a biblical perspective, what is their background and training that enables them to speak from authority on spiritual matters? Have they formally taken either Hebrew or Greek? Have they taken Bible courses from well-recognized institutions and instructors? Do they claim that their own experiential background as a survivor or in the sex industry makes them an authority on working with parts? What work have they produced that is both theologically sound and psychologically grounded? Can they explain things in an understandable manner? Do they suggest there's a quick fix?
again, the emphasis on that is for the professional people helper, for the therapist, whoever somebody's working with, because it's very important to make sure that the person you're entrusting, in a way, your life with, as far as adjustment and moving forward, has a solid background. So there's a whole lot of people, as we know, Diana, out in this space, so to speak. I don't even like to use that term, but dealing with survivors in the survivor community that will claim to be knowledgeable. And there's a bazillion and one theories out there, and we see people flitting here and there, survivors trying to find help with promises of instant or very quick relief. And it will leave them oftentimes disillusioned because really the person that's leading them, that's helping them, doesn't have the qualifications. And I know we have
the
spoken.
blind leading the blind.
There you go. Yeah. Any thoughts about, well, you just shared as far as how we ended up working together, now we're collaborating, but any words that you have for survivors about who they choose?
Again, I think the Christianity part is huge. And I'm also going to recommend you stay away from New Age fixes. It's so important because the New Age leads you down a path that is going to have you constantly working and reaching. You're going to get to a level and okay, you got to go to the next level. And it's just the constant climbing and reaching and climbing and reaching and not just having, you never get to a level of peace. So, and I think Christianity can give that to you and that forgiveness from Jesus. It's important when you're healing.
And we will go in touching on it a little bit today, but certainly in future podcasts for people to understand you know from where you speak or what you speak about. You were heavily involved. You were heavily involved.
Yeah, the New Age, I think 15 years, Scientology for 8 years. I was looking for answers. It wasn't necessarily SRA. I didn't have my memories then, but I was looking for answers, for peace, for healing, just for God, and never finding him until my husband baptized me. So.
Oh, okay. We'll get back to the. Oh, this would be an example, for instance, like how can you tell if somebody is qualified? They should be able to produce something to show you their qualifications. They should actually post that on their website if they have that. There has been an attempt to smear me, but I thought, you know what, we would accomplish two things. We would show one example of what somebody can produce to verify that they're the real deal, as well as it addresses some slander. It was a big smear campaign out there. focusing on both aspects of my career. One is trauma, as a trauma therapist working with people, as well as I'm a certified sex offender treatment provider, many years working in the secure institution, prison, and then after that. So I thought we might as well show a little bit of that verification because some perps and perp apologists, as I call them, led by Matt Osborne and Sierra Weir, have caused people to wonder about my background. They have said that I have falsified everything. So this will be an example of what somebody might be able to show, that if they really have background training and experience as far as a professional, they should be able to show something. Now let's see. There we go. And nobody's ever seen these before. These are actual emails during my time in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections on psychology staff.
Jon, the parole board member, commented very favorably on the PCRA you completed on inmate Smith. He stated that he found the information you provided to be very useful to him in his work, and he provided this compliment in a very focused manner. He meant it. I noted to him that you do an excellent job. There you are. And unsolicited from a parole board member. Congratulations. Signed, Robert Yaskanich, Licensed Psychologist Manager, SCI Somerset, Pennsylvania Department of Correction.
It's not often that I read a PCRA report that makes me stop and say, wow. Now that's an outstanding report, but boy, I sure did today. I was checking to see if there was a parole psych eval on the above inmate. When I found a November 2010 report authored by Jon Uhler under Jim's supervision. Talk about taking your time, doing great research, an excellent interview, and one of the finest reports I have seen in a long time. In the DOC, often people are quick to point out when somebody has done something wrong and slow to point out when somebody has really gone the extra mile. So, I felt the need to say, thank you. Not only for saving me from having to do a report on this inmate, but more importantly for doing such a great job. Thanks very much, and I am guessing parole will be just as pleased with this thorough and insightful job. Jon, my pleasure, for the feedback. I've read some, and perhaps written one or two, excellent reports in my day, but yours was one of the best. I hope you don't mind. But I am including it in a special file of mine, so that I borrow a phrase or two from it, if and when I see an inmate to whom it applies. Great work. Thanks again. Signed, Kenneth Cairns, Licensed Psychological Manager for the Western Region, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
Hi, Jon. Thank you so much for this comprehensive summary. I am copying the folks from OMHSAS, the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, BPPP, Board of Probation, Parole and Pardons, and SCI Waymart, the DOC's Special Assessment Unit, as I think they will find it most informative. Thank you for all of the righteous work that you and the rest of your team have done on the SSNU. I know how difficult and challenging these clients have been. Take care. Signed, Lance Couturier, Chief of Psychological Services, Bureau of Healthcare Services, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
Jon, you clearly did an excellent job delivering this program given the results. Signed, Dave Roberts, Deputy Superintendent for Centralized Services, SCI Crescent, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
Hello, Jon. I assigned you computer access rights to the mainframe mental health tracking system and the DocNet psychological assessment area. Please try both when you get a chance, and let me know if you have any problems. I have heard good things about your work in the SSNU at a recent SNU training and leadership styles training. DOC folks who know who the inmates that you are dealing with are amazed that you have gotten anywhere with any of them and want very much for you to succeed, for their sakes and for yours. Thanks very much for all you and the team do. Good luck. Signed, Kathleen Parsons, Assistant Chief of Psychological Services, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Bureau of Healthcare Services.
Jon, In response to your offer to share your automated program management tool, I think the Special Management Unit program would find it invaluable. I am interested in obtaining a copy of your files to examine the system in more detail for tweaking to meet the specific programming needs of the Special Management Unit staff, and to consider the system for use in other departmental areas. Call me at 717-555-6789 if you have trouble sending them, due to file size, or if you want to share them with several others. My colleagues agreed to save them to a private link to facilitate viewing for all interested. I was incredibly impressed by the quality of your work and quantity of work you have done to implement a solid SSNU program. And I especially enjoyed your enthusiasm. Thanks, Jon. I'll check with Jill Fluck, Secretary Beard's special assistant, when I have some time. You are more than welcome for the positive feedback. It is truly deserved, as it is so evident that you've been producing great work. I am especially impressed with the content of the program, how consistent it is with the appropriate targets, and how it adheres so well to known principles of effective intervention. While it is discouraging to attempt to deliver an effective program in a culture not 100% supportive of rehab efforts, I am confident our department is turning the corner. Secretary Beard is supportive of evidence-based programming. And, with his vision, our DOC will slowly but surely make the technology transfer from research to practice and provide needed staff training to support these efforts. Plans are currently underway to provide a training for officers to reinforce programmatic efforts. This is just one of many irons in the fire. But it will take time. So, do keep pressing on. I'm certain your efforts will make a difference. Signed, Heather Yates, Evaluation Research Analyst, Office of Planning, Research, Statistics, and Grants, Central Office, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
Do I think you're inflating? No, you're not inflating the numbers, Jon. Again, they're probably a little bit low, considering it was you we're talking about.
Okay. So
if it were I would say that was probably doable, but you did much more than the rest of us did, Jon. Again, you're an amazing work ethic. And again, you were all about change. You weren't about eight in the gate, as the old saying goes, eight in the gate. You know, you had care and concern. You wanted to make a change in their lives. You wanted to instill change within them. And by gum, you worked hard to get that change, Jon. And I did see some change with some inmates because of your involvement with them. So you probably underestimated again, Jon. I think you kept your numbers low. Yeah, I think
I wanted to go conservative because Matt said I overinflated them. So he says there's no way I could have done the numbers that I indicate. And so we have.
Well, that man's a fool.
We'll do the total.
That man is a fool, Jon.
Okay. But we're looking at the numbers. You indicated that I probably underestimated. So I saw conservatively 4,500 plus inmates for a total of 15,000 plus hours. What I said that Matt camped on is I said I saw 4,000 men who have sexually offended, whether they've been convicted or not, different issue. 4,000 individuals who've sexually perpetrated for 11,000 clinical contact hours. Carolyn, so based upon, I said 4,000, you and I have worked the numbers. I'm going to scroll back up. Conservatively then, I saw 4,541 inmates. So would I have been overinflating that number, or do you think that's fairly conservative?
I still think it's fairly conservative, Jon.
And I said, and when I applied for the ATSA membership, that Matt sabotaged because he called them and then he did his little article saying Uhler finagled a video. I was kind enough on behalf of ATSA, because Matt called them, to excise out what they took issue with, but it was really because they're featuring and pushing the misnomer of MAPS. They feature James Canner. I take issue with that. So I said I had 11,000 clinical contact hours, which conservatively was actually 15,000. So all that to ask or to say and ask. Carolyn, Matt, again, has made the point that Euler could never have seen.
Oh, poor Matt.
He couldn't have seen the number. He overinflated it. He embellished his experience. He's just a bloviating blowhard. He is a nobody and doesn't know anything. Jimmy Hinton also said that, both of whom I don't think have ever worked in prison and are not therapists. Any thoughts? And we'll close.
Uh, well, John, I think you put that baby to rest. You know, you've done an amazing job with breaking down the numbers. Talk about itemization. My goodness, John, that is your specialty. Yeah, you take something big and you break it down into tiny little segments, so the rest of us can understand what's going on. So, no, John, I think you underestimated what you did for all those years you worked at the prison. So, I feel bad for the likes of Mr. Osborne because the man is a fool. Now, I don't know where he gets what he gets, why he tries to put out numbers and statistics and things like that. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You and I both worked at a prison. I was only there for 4 years. You were there much, much longer. So I know I put in an enormous amount of hours individually and in group. I can only imagine that I'm sure it was at least triple, if not more for you. So I'm glad I could help a little bit with this, John. And I hope that Mr. Osborne and et al. Finally grow a brain, finally grow a life, go on with their lives, do their whatever perversions they do, but let you alone. They're going to come after you and after you and after you, John, because you're trying to make a difference. And you're a Christian man who calls things as they are, and they can't stand that. The more perverse, the better for this group of people, John. So I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you are still going strong. You're not going to let them pigeonhole you into something that you don't need pigeonholed into, and that you're strong enough characterologically, you're strong enough emotionally, mentally, physically, every which way to combat them. So I'm very proud to call you my friend. And I'm glad that I can help in what small ways I can. I'll be there, John. Again, another person of faith. I'll be there, try to help whatever you might need from me in the future. Please let me know. But I'm sorry you're going through this. It's a sham. It's a travesty, and it should never be. But I'm glad you're holding up. I'm glad you're tenacious, and you are, John. And you're combating them as you need to be. So again, very proud of you. I just wish I could have been more help. I've been gone for 14 years, so my memory with the prison is really shoddy at this point. But there are things I do remember, and the fact that you are a worker bee. You are very industrious compared to most PSSs I've ever known, John. So counselors, PSSs, you're very industrious. So very proud of you to call you my friend. Absolutely.
Okay, now that no lest anybody think that that's self-serving. That was not self-promotion. That was to actually speak to two issues. One, the importance of a clinician's background. And then because there will be certain groups, Diana, that will quickly go after and try to float some of the slanderous little videos they've made saying, Euler's doesn't have the background, but I've got the background as far as the professional background. We're going to set the stage for why can you speak to what you will be speaking to. But there's an example that along with degrees and whatnot, we have some emails and a coworker. So there should be something that a professional can point to say, all things being equal, I have the qualifications, because there's a lot of people that are claiming to be able to help survivors where they can't produce anything to show that they've worked with somebody. I'm personally familiar with somebody who had worked with survivors now for 2 years and really did damage because she was claiming that she could help, but she referenced her own background in the quote-unquote sex industry. And somehow that gave her credibility then to solicit, there's no other way to put it, solicit survivors. And she has sounded like she knows what she's talking about. But I am picking up the pieces, quite frankly, of somebody that's been very damaged. This is not an area that you go into as far as working with people that have been this severely damaged. You do not presume to work with them if you do not have the background or training, because you'll be held accountable and you are going to risk doing real damage to people. Diana, any thoughts on that? I kind of got that out of the way, but we put that out there, hopefully to speak to matters.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you did address that, because someone might look into and research you, and Matt Osborne and Sierra Weir's slander campaign against you it's out there, and it's going to affect people's decisions. And I'm glad that people will know that it's all lies. It's their attempt to cover their butt because you're unmasking them. So they need to discredit you to prove, whatever they're trying to prove, which isn't, which are lies. So I think it was necessary to put that on there. And
Matt's first little article was South Carolina is investigating Jon Uhler. Well, it's because Sierra and Matt worked together, and Sierra made a false complaint saying she was a client of mine. She's never been a client. So she lies, knowing that she didn't have to attest under penalty of perjury. So she put this lie out there, an egregious lie, saying I was withholding her clinical information from her, which is a HIPAA violation. The state of South Carolina would assume that somebody like that would be telling the truth. They would never assume that somebody would be so brazen, so bold, so sociopathic or psychopathic as to do a whopping lie. And so Matt and Sierra timed it, knowing that because of this grand lie, South Carolina would accept the complaint and launch an investigation. So hence when Matt says, South Carolina is investigating Jon Uhler, well, guess who filed the false complaint? It was they who did it, and off to the races and so are we. So there is more in that series unmasking Matt Osborne and the LGBTQ radicals and their supporters. So there's more to that.
Knowing they could not debate him, they elected to go after him personally by means of crafting a slanderous smear campaign.
The red flags around Jon Uhler, Part 1 and Part 2. How Jon Uhler put his family behind him. Part 2 of our investigation into this safeguarding expert.
Well, Jon Uhler's son, Reed, had enough of seeing his good father slimed by such LGBTQ deviants and their twisted little flying monkeys, and had heard enough of the outright lies and slander of his dad, that he decided to make a number of videos in defense of his father to unmask the lies crafted by the deviant radicals and the rest of the slimy deceivers. The following is an excerpt from one of those videos where Reed speaks with authority and actual first-hand knowledge and experience about who their father is and what their upbringing was really like.
Hey there, this is Reed, and I'm Jon Uhler's son, and I wanted to put together this video just to give my perspective about what's been going on, and mostly just to talk about my own experiences and my memories of what it was like growing up in our household. And I should mention there has been someone online who's taken one of my videos that I used to use on a different account. So just so you know, that's not my account, and people have taken that and are trying to impersonate me. So what I say in this video, these are my actual thoughts. I'm not going to respond specifically to the specific accusations, because some of them are just out there.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
South Carolina is investigating Jon Uhler. And so are we, part 1 in a series. 7 red flags that detransitioners cannot unsee in Jon Uhler. And everyone should examine for themselves. Matt and Excelensic discuss the red flags around Jon Uhler. The Jon Uhler demolition zone, more people come forward with their stories. Jon Uhler stealth edits a video to hide false professional membership claims. Because our reporting has been solid, the red flags around Jon Uhler, part 1 and part 2. How Jon Uhler put his family behind him. Part 2 of our investigation into this safeguarding expert.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things and the accusations that people have been saying online. Some of them are just out there. I wrote some things down just to help me remember, just to kind of jog my memory and give me some specifics to talk about as a kid, whether it was just good memories in general or specific. I wrote down a lot of stuff to do with my dad just to show how involved he was, especially compared to a lot of dads. I would definitely say he was the most involved dad that I know. I just wanted to add, I am in complete disagreement with what's being put out there about my dad, and I believe this is happening because he is on the side of good and not evil, and he is making a lot of people accountable. So people are trying to find as much dirt on him as possible. I'm proud of the work he's doing. It's tough work that not a lot of people want to do, exposing abuse. So people are trying to expose him, find dirt on him. So that's my view. And yeah, let's get into it. So I wrote some things down just to help me remember, just to kind of jog my memory and give me some specifics to talk about as a kid, whether it was just good memories in general or specific. I wrote down a lot of stuff to do with my dad just to show how involved he was, especially compared to a lot of dads. I would definitely say he was the most involved dad that I know, and I would strive to be like him as a dad myself.
But to let people know, again, the importance is check out the background of your therapist, and also take note if someone is saying that the person isn't qualified. Find out who's saying these things. If they happen to be pro-pedophile pushing or policy pushing perps and their apologists that are in the radical LGBTQ end of things, they're pushing cross-dressing of young teen boys, you might want to rethink who you're taking your information from.
Yeah, and they mock SRA and all
absolutely
that.
They do, and that's why we're spending
addressing the issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, somebody should be able to provide information. There's my sex offender treatment provider certification. You'll see down there the date, because Matt said that I wouldn't be able to be recertified. Well, there we go. Matt also indicated that I have never been trained in the Static 99. That's all we used in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections for 11 years, and that I haven't been trained. He mocked, oh, that just looks like an attendance certificate in the hair psychopathy checklist. But I remind Matt that you had to be hand-selected for that. And to be in attendance and successfully complete that is certification. And I guess Matt and Jimmy Hinton and others probably couldn't get invited to that kind of training. Okay. They also kind of did, they went lower than anybody I've ever heard of, and they've tried to say I'm a horrible person. But there's a series that I've done, and my son has put out a number of hours on that. So if anybody wants to watch that.
Who is Jon Uhler as a person and as a father? Jon's son gives a thoughtful glimpse into who he is behind the scenes.
Okay.
Who is Jon Uhler as a person and as a father?
Gosh. Okay, now we're gonna transition again. Make sure the person you're working with is qualified, and if somebody's saying something negative, research that, but also consider the source. Now we're going to talk about the field of trauma therapy, because there will be people that will say, oh, this thing's just fuzzy and nebulous and there's nothing really behind it. Well, first of all, a therapist that you work with should be able to, has to maintain training and should be able to, again, provide, if somebody asks, what are their qualifications? Let me click on this. This is a major, there we go. Did that window come up, Diana?
I'm looking at the PESI, the can't miss
Okay, it didn't come up. My apologies. Well, this is a site that has, I have my certifications through sex offender treatment and trauma. You can go to that. If anybody, you may have to be a professional, that I don't know. But if you can take any of these educational courses, I would strongly recommend it. You can see that this is a major source, a major source of education. I've got to see how I'm working this thing here. There we are, for even healthcare and rehab. So PESI is a major player in the field, or an organization that helps with continuing education. That's where I received the Evergreen certification. Again, certain individuals have mocked that. Well, what is Evergreen? Okay, so here's a good example. If someone says they're trauma informed, here is the requirements. So they have to have a master's. So it's a master's level course. You have to have years in the field. You have to provide that background. Then you can see some of the other courses, for instance. So there's a 4-month training, Frank Anderson's IFS. That's an online intensive program. Then there's 18-hour parts work. So again, that's what we're talking about, but you'll see some of the other approaches. I'm down here on from IFS, Gestalt, somatic therapy. So again, if somebody wants to poo-poo certifications, the question is, are you adequately, were you certified by a legitimate organization? If so, then this is an example. If someone wants to put this down, and if someone doesn't have one, you may want to ask them why. Dissociation-focused trauma therapy, written exposure therapy for trauma, deactivating the polyvagal response. Now here they say racial trauma, but it's just trauma. And behavioral activation for trauma, and transforming the living legacy of trauma. So that's an example. If someone claims to be certified as a trauma professional, that again shows you some of their background. Here would be some things they could produce. Not that anybody's not that a therapist is going to typically produce their continuing education, but this is what they get. I am trained in EMDR. Why did I show this? That was live, by the way, because we speak to the issue of EMDR, that I do not believe it's applicable and it's appropriate for the kind of trauma, Diana, that you experienced and that we will be addressing. So when somebody says, if someone's going to say, well, Uhler doesn't know what he's talking about with the EMDR, so they're okay. And on the right, there's a certification for PTSD clinical workshop, comprehensive approach to the effectiveness. And again, oftentimes there's going to be 12 and a half hours. The one on the right was actually pre-recorded. The one on the left was live. To help people also see that this field is not just filled with fluff, this is Bessel van der Kolk's organization. He would probably say it's not his, but he is behind this. And again, he's one of the leaders in the field. So I recommend, you can see that you go onto traumaresearchfoundation.org. And if I do that, I think I'm going to lose the picture. But again, great source of research in the field of trauma therapy to help people understand that this is it's not really new. It's probably, 30 years old, but it's really coming into its own. It's another organization that I've been a part of, International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. This is a very solid research-based organization, and I may be publishing here at some point in time, and so I'll probably renew my membership so I can publish. Here is their journal, Journal of Trauma and Dissociation. Okay, so again, if people want to say that trauma therapy and what we're going to be talking about, Diana, is fringe, you can see that it is not fringe. There is a lot of information out there now. Even Cambridge University Press, this was 2015. This speaks to, are repressed memories a real thing, and do they show evidence of repression coming to the surface as far as repressed memories? So this is just one of many research articles, but Cambridge Press is not a slipshod organization. I want to recommend this website. They do a really nice job. So International Trauma Professionals Association, and they have areas of focus, and it's really for education. And when somebody says they're trauma informed, if you look at this middle box up here, what it means is they've taken a number of courses or a number of hours of courses on information about what trauma does to the human nervous system, quite frankly, and the brain. So you've got a lot of brain science behind that. You can see over here in the first box, history of psychotraumatology. Here's the growing body of knowledge. If anybody's familiar with ACEs, if you've ever gone to the doctor and filled out a little 10 questionnaire, you're looking at adversive childhood experiences. That was actually the result of a 17,000 member research study on 17,000 files out of Kaiser Permanente in California, out of California. The next box there, again, if you go on this website, you see the different kinds of trauma. And then we'll look at what is the triphasic model. Why are we bringing any of this up? Because IHC, you'll see over in the far right there, down here, internal family systems. Hopefully someday, as we are able to, Diana, you and I, as we're able to put the time into helping others, really, including providers, understand the unique facets and benefits of IHC, our model. Hopefully someday our model will be right in there.
Indeed.
And let me see if I can advance the next slide. There we go. Again, this just, sorry, just enlarged it. So down on the bottom right. So you can see evidence-based, folks. Okay, what is evidence-based? Research. Okay, so IFS has been researched. And IHC, our model, internal healing and collaboration, is really based upon the work of IFS, but it takes it to another level. As we have talked about, there are distinct differences, Diana, in our model, where IFS kind of leaves off and they really can't help someone from a Christian perspective, and including SRA. Here's one example, the same site, to help people see that there's a lot of science that goes into trauma therapy and training someone. So this particular, and I recommend people go on there. It's very interesting seeing how the connection between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. So we're talking the endocrine system. If somebody's been under a lot of stress, it is not their imagination. Body keeps the score. So here is an example of thermography, different emotional states. And so again, if people want to poo-poo or downplay the importance of being trauma-informed and speaking to the impact of trauma, you can see the different bodily states. The only two that are wonderful are the happiness in the top middle and love in the bottom left, but those are drug-induced states. I'm kidding, right? People, place, and things. It's always nice when you're happy or in love, but those don't last. The top upper right is, I think, when the machine doesn't have anybody in it. But it shows you the impact, especially in the GI tract. There's a lot of neurotransmitters that are in the gut. A healing or illness oftentimes starts in the gut. So it's very important for people to understand the mind-body connection. I just saw this one, very interesting, the impact over the developmental years. And it shows the differences. I
That's
have left.
fascinating.
I've left the reference up there. As a matter of fact, in the show notes, I'll put these different links. I haven't had a chance to in depth look at this, but I think it's fair to say that the adult brain experiences trauma differently than a child. So it's full body for the child, meaning the brain can't filter out really issues of responsibility. That's a part of it. Okay, so you can see if you put a 6-year-old through something different versus an adult. So the bottom is obviously over the age of 18. Those are the ages that EMDR will work if trauma starts there.
At
But
18 and older.
I believe so. Or if it's even 17 or 14, if it's, for instance, a car accident, but EMDR is very effective with combat veterans. EMDR will have an effect on trauma survivors, but I believe it will be frustrating and detrimental in the long run because whatever successes are gained are bypassing the normal system, and Diana will be talking to that. And so whatever seeming benefits will eventually, in my estimation, they will not be permanent. And so you'll have to keep going through this because, in a way, it's overriding the defenses of the parts. And so the core person isn't prepared for what's going to come up, and it's not going to be all that helpful. So, again, just thinking in terms of trauma, the reality of it for those that are inclined to say, oh, this is just a bunch of fluff and stuff, this trauma therapy. So, okay. And we're looking at a triphasic model that is, in general, as far as a therapeutic model, IHC is a therapeutic model that deals in trauma, and we would say we're a triphasic model, if I can get the sound going.
Core conceptual framework and clinical rationale for the triphasic model of trauma work. The triphasic model is fundamentally structured around the understanding that trauma profoundly destabilizes the survivor's internal regulatory systems, making direct processing of traumatic memories potentially overwhelming if undertaken prematurely. Instead, the triphasic framework methodically builds capacities and strengths in the survivor before addressing traumatic memories directly. Van der Kolk, 2014. Courtois and Ford, 2013. The three-phase model systematically addresses trauma recovery through safety and stabilization, establishing emotional, psychological, physical, and relational safety, building self-regulation capacities, and fostering a secure therapeutic alliance. Remembrance and processing, gradually processing and integrating traumatic memories safely, carefully, and effectively, minimizing the risk of re-traumatization and emotional overwhelm. Integration, reconnection, and rehabilitation, restoring and enhancing relational and existential well-being, reconstructing a coherent self-narrative, and supporting long-term post-traumatic growth and resilience. Each phase addresses specific clinical challenges, carefully preparing the patient for the next phase, thereby ensuring emotional and neurobiological readiness before more intensive therapeutic interventions. This phased approach minimizes risk, respects patient autonomy, and enhances therapeutic efficacy and sustainability.
Unless somebody be confused because it says integration. That's different than the integration that people talk about in terms of the parts. We're not in favor of that. That just means somebody is going to be able to hold, as it were, the different aspects of themselves, also the emotions.
Yeah,
So,
being co-conscious with your
there we go.
part. Yeah.
Well put. Well put.
Core conceptual.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, having said all of that, I'm going to back out of this just for a second. Diana, first, any thoughts on anything that was rather long?
Yeah, no, I'm just following along with you.
Okay. So that sets the stage for first, legitimizing the field of trauma therapy, that this is a real legitimate field, an important field, and one that is research-based. it's important then that the person you're working with, that a survivor is working with, knows their stuff. A lot of people can claim that they work with survivors, but it really is important to choose somebody that has the background. That's in general, and that's where IFS comes in and a lot of the different models. What I would say now for IHC is specifically geared to work with those populations, as it were, that IFS is not able to do so because it's going to get into the deeply psychological. Now, IFS might be able to work with MKUltra. We'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of SRA, satanic ritual abuse, they don't claim to have any specific perspective on spirituality, other than they'll talk in terms of spiritual traditions and things. Well, if somebody's been on the receiving end of really sadistic, dark spiritual abuse by perpetrators that are steeped in satanic stuff and using the Bible, Diana, as you talked about, IFS is not going to be able to help that.
Yeah. It doesn't even address it.
It doesn't even address it. Okay, so what IHC does is it addresses, for those that have been impacted by not just ritualistic abuse, that can either be secular or spiritual. It means it's repetitive and it's sadistic and it's thought out by perpetrators. But rare is the time you're going to have ritualistic abuse and not have satanic ritual abuse, because the perpetrators get worse. They're going to be people.
I was just thinking, you don't ever hear about anti-Buddha abuse or anti-Muhammad abuse. It's just satanic ritual abuse. So, anyway.
That's right. Not a lot of people have been abused by a perpetrator is harming them, and they pick up the works of Buddha to really double down.
I don't even know what the antithesis to Buddha or Mohammedanism is. But Christianity certainly has an antithesis. So,
that's right.
And that's what's used. So
we're going to introduce, just focusing topically just for a moment, to help lay the groundwork so that people not only can see that, okay, there is such a thing as trauma work, trauma therapy, but why should somebody be willing to listen to or even believe in SRA? I'm glad they asked that question, because we're here to let them see that there's a lot of resources now out there. Here's just a couple out there. Sean Ryan's show is the one on the bottom left. You have Camp Gagnon. We're going to see a interview that's the top ritual murder. So there's a New York City investigator uncovers satanic ritual murder. We're going to see, he's going to interview the cop over on the left. So that particular former detective has been making the rounds, fortunately, on different podcasts. The one on the right, that is an undercover investigator. And the one on the bottom, so these are just a couple that people can go online and start seeing that this is a very real thing, and it's a very current day thing. So again, when we're talking SRA, this is not somebody's imagination. This is a real thing. And the question is, what kind of people could do this, and what do they do that get into this? Well, what do they do in terms of hurting people? Well, I'm glad we asked that. Okay. What's the best way to understand this? It's Epstein-level stuff. It's actually worse, by the way. But now most people are aware of the Epstein files, and that there is things going on behind the scenes. And first, I would say, and Diana, this is going to be an introduction to helping people understand what you yourself have lived through, starting when you were young. So how can we help people understand that there really are, at elite levels, there's child trafficking? Well, that could be really bad. Well, probably somebody that was with the FBI might be somebody we might want to listen to. And of all people from the FBI, how about somebody that ran the largest division, which would be Southern California? I wonder if somebody like that might have something to say.
I retired from the FBI March 1979. At that time, I was in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I had more than 700 personnel under my command. The Attorney General of the United States, Griffin Bell, asked me after I retired if I'd coordinate security for the Pan American Games. I did. I was a consultant in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. I was a consultant for former Governor Jerry Brown, California Narcotic Authority. So I do have credentials. My first major and credibility, believe me. Now, if you read the internet, you may not think so, because there are some heavy-duty FBI informants out there like Stu Webb and Barbara Hartwell, who are MKUltra mind control victims, CIA mind control victims, who are making all kinds of disparaging remarks about me. But I don't want to deal with those people, because if you read their material, you'll see that it's designed to discredit people like me, former State Senator John DeCamp, and other leaders who are trying our best to expose what's happening in America today, and actually around the world. This international child kidnapping ring, I later learned, was out of Washington, D.C. It was very active, and the organization is known as the Finders. And I have a report on the Finders back there. Everything I'm telling you is documented, by the way. The Finders has been established and operating throughout the 1960s up to the present time. It was exposed in 1987. They moved their operation to Wichita, Kansas, and they're operating right today in Wichita, Kansas. I have taken my report to the FBI a half a dozen times, demanded an investigation, and I have yet to be interviewed. So we have the Finders, we have the Franklin cover-up, which documents what I'm telling you. We have the pawns in the game. Pawns in the game is the Illuminati. This is the Illuminati/satanic movement in this country today.
Officers raise their families there. And like military communities anywhere, the Presidio has a daycare center, the Child Development Center. It's where military families leave their kids, some as young as 3, while they report for duty. You trust the U.S. Army with your children's safety. That's the deal. In the fall of '86, a 3-year-old boy comes from the daycare center and tells his mom that a teacher named Gary Hambright hurt him. His mother takes him to a doctor. The examination reveals physical evidence consistent with abuse. So, the San Francisco police and the FBI open an investigation into Hambright. He's a 35-year-old Baptist minister who works at the center. He denies everything. The other teacher and the staff back him up. The Army's position is that this is an isolated incident involving one teacher and one child, but that position falls apart almost immediately. The Child Adolescent Sexual Abuse Referral Center at San Francisco General Hospital gets involved. They tell the Army to expect multiple victims. The Army's response? We have no reason to believe that other children have been victimized. But the children keep talking. Parents start noticing changes in their kids. Nightmares, bedwetting, violent outbursts, sudden mood shifts and behavior that didn't exist before they went to daycare. One by one, parents take their children to be evaluated, and one by one, the evaluations come back the same way. By the end of the investigation, at least 58 of the roughly 100 children who attended the Presidio's Child Development Center show physical and mental signs of SA. 58 out of 100. That's a majority of kids. And 5 of those children, toddlers, tested positive for chlamydia. That's a sexually transmitted disease in children who were still wearing diapers. There's exactly one way a 3-year-old in diapers contracts chlamydia. The children's accounts go beyond what anyone wanted to hear. They described being taken off the Presidio base to private homes. They described multiple perpetrators, not just Hambright. Ritualistic elements being urinated on, feces smeared on their bodies, blood, threats of violence. They described being forced to watch things that no child should ever have to see. The Army keeps the daycare center open for over a year after the first disclosure. So while state-run centers get shut down at the first hint of abuse, the Presidio Center stays open while the victim count climbs past 50. And the children weren't just naming Gary Hambright anymore. They were describing other people people who came to the center, people who took them places. A man and a woman whose names they pronounced the way a 3-year-old would, Mikey and Shambi. So let's go back to the day at that post exchange, August 12, 1987. You already know the scene. Captain Adams Thompson, his wife Michelle, their 3-year-old daughter. The girl spots Aquino across the store, grabs her father's leg, and identifies him as Mikey. But now you have the context. This isn't happening in a vacuum, but by this point, dozens of children have already reported abuse at the daycare center. The investigation into Hambright has been going on for months. Parents are terrified, and the army is stonewalling. And now a child is pointing at a lieutenant colonel in military intelligence and saying that's one of the people who did it. The FBI interviews the girl the same night. An agent named Foreman conducts the interview. The girl picks Aquino out from a photo lineup. She doesn't pick out Lilith Aquino as Shambi from the photos, but after viewing a video lineup, she identifies Michael again. She tells the agent that Shambi and Mr. Gary took her to Mr. Gary's house. She says Mikey was there. She describes the house as blue-gray in color. That matches the color of Aquino's residence in Leavenworth Street in San Francisco. She describes a room with soft walls where Mikey forced her to stay and blocked the door so she couldn't leave. Now, 2 days later, August 14th, a search warrant is executed on the Aquino home. FBI agents and San Francisco police officers go through the house. They seize videotapes, cassette tapes, notebooks with names and addresses, 2 photo albums, plastic cases of negatives, 29 photographs of costumes and masks, and investigators note what appeared to be a soundproofed room, a room with soft walls. Curious. The Aquino home wasn't the only place on the Presidio that raised eyebrows. A reporter named Linda Goldston from the San Jose Mercury News does her own on-site inspection of the Presidio grounds. She goes to the military intelligence area where Aquino was stationed. Now, behind that building, she finds a concrete set of bunkers that's been converted into something strange. Inside one bunker, the words Prince of Darkness are painted in blood-red letters on the wall. The number 666 is scrolled across another surface. On the floor, there's some partly burned logs. There was an enormous pentagram on the wall facing the military intelligence barracks. Black and white candle drippings are visible throughout the whole structure. In a separate building further up the street, Goldston finds a large drawing of a figure with red eyes and horns. The building's locked tight. No entrance granted to outsiders under any circumstances. They're ritual chambers on a U.S. Army base behind the intelligence building where a self-declared Satanist lieutenant colonel has been stationed. So that's a lot to digest. But what does Aquino have to say about all this? Well, he says none of it happened. Full stop.
We have a breaking news update to a Fox 13 investigation. The Utah County Sheriff's Office has arrested one of its suspects in a ritualistic child sex abuse investigation. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz has been following this story all year, and he's live in studio with an update.
Yeah, Max, this is David Hamblin. He's a former therapist, and that's his previous mugshot from back when he was charged with 18 counts of sex abuse in 2012. We first found out about this new case from victims in February. That's how long we've been accumulating information on this man. And the first thing we did was look back at that old case, trying to figure out why those charges were dropped by the Utah County Attorney's Office. You can read it right there on your screen. Even though Hamblin confessed to raping one of his young female family members in an undercover phone call recorded by the Provo Police Department, Hamblin was not the only suspect back then, and even though he was arrested this morning, we know he's not the only suspect now. Then in May, the Utah County Sheriff's Office spoke about this case for the first time publicly, announcing it was opening a ritualistic child sex abuse investigation spanning 3 counties, Utah County, San Pete County, and Juab County between the years 1990 and 2010. They did not name any suspects, but the next day, Utah County Attorney David Levitt held a press conference naming himself and describing his link to Hamblin.
This therapist was my elders quorum president in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was my neighbor. I had a family connection.
From outing himself as a suspect in June and describing his relationship with Hamblin.
I prosecuted the therapist in Juab County for poaching a deer. He poached a deer to use for ritualistic purposes.
During that same press conference, Levitt described his accuser as tragically mentally ill. She's one of the same women who accused Hamblin and others.
Shame on you for doing that. It's uncalled for. He said tragically mentally ill woman 5 times. To attack their mental health status as a way to discredit them, and it was clear that that's what he was doing, and that's just not okay.
There is no organized ring of abuse. It was debunked more than 10 years ago.
But watch and listen. More than 2 years before that press conference, Levitt sat down for a different interview and was asked if he thought ritualistic sex abuse was real. He went on to describe Hamblin and his own accuser, calling her a victim.
Do I think that occurs? Yeah, I think it occurs. I know some victims of it. Yeah, I know some victims of it. I was not in a position to prosecute it. Who was into Native American stuff and kill deer and get deer hearts and drink their blood and drink the deer's blood.
These clips are now evidence in that case.
How do you train a dog to roll over when it's time to roll over? You do it by giving a reward and repetition.
Utah lawmakers look to revive a bill on ritualistic sexual abuse.
I am so grateful for those who have listened and supported. Words can't even express.
I'm Ben Winslow on Utah's Capitol Hill. The bill would enhance penalties for sex abuse crimes where there's evidence of ritualistic abuse.
My name is Kara Baldry, and I'm a survivor of ritual abuse.
Kara Baldry testified again before the Utah State Legislature's Interim Judiciary Committee about the abuse she says she suffered as a child.
Kidnapping is already against the law, and raping a child at gunpoint is also against the law. But then afterwards, being offered up as a sacrifice to an evil unknown deity in exchange for power with unfamiliar chanting, candles lit, and strange symbols displayed is currently not in the law.
Representative Ken Ivory's bill was introduced earlier this year but failed to advance. It would enhance penalties in cases where it's proven there was some sort of ritualistic abuse.
It makes it to the severity that this is. I mean, Ben, this is heinous. As we heard, this is almost, it's difficult to even hear, let alone understand and deal with for the survivors. And so by having this in code, that gives them immediately the credibility that this is a thing.
Do we have any idea how widespread this is?
There are dozens, hundreds of credible allegations from the investigations that they've done so far.
Lawmakers had questions, with many noting that abuse itself is already a crime. But survivors say classifying ritual abuse as its own crime would open the door for resources and give them justice.
I have been met with so many roadblocks in my own healing.
There have been some high-profile cases recently. Imprisoned polygamist leader Warren Jeffs was accused of ritualistic sexual abuse in a civil lawsuit filed by a former follower. The Utah County Sheriff's Office in 2022 announced it was conducting an investigation into ritualistic abuse with more than 100 potential victims. The Sheriff's Office says it still has other investigations going on and urged support for the bill.
The fact that this abuse has not been codified at this time literally just sends a message to these victims that they're irrelevant and they're not believed.
This is a thing, sadly, and we need to do all that we can to eradicate it so that it's no longer a thing in Utah.
The bill will be considered in the upcoming legislative session that starts in January. On the Hill, Ben Winslow, Fox 13 News, Utah.
First public.
Well, that's a lot for us to digest anyways, right there. And there's maybe we'll save the rest for next time. Dana. So we've set the case or made the case for. We haven't even listened to the police officers talk about their cases. So maybe we'll save the rest for dealing with police investigations for SRA and then MK Ultra. People can go on to YouTube right now and just type those things in and they'll see what we're referencing. But again, the reason we're bringing that up is we at first made the case that the field of trauma therapy is a legitimate field. It deals with very legitimate the legitimate impact. It's not a weird science kind of thing. It's not a fringe thing. You've got heavy duty researchers and people in the field. People then need to consider the background of the therapist. I used myself as an example, but also to speak to people that will try to. And we need to begin to question, why would somebody work so hard to discredit somebody that has a lot of credibility? So that's something that survivors might want to rethink if they are influenced by anybody in alternative lifestyles who are trying to gain access to teenagers or younger, middle school and junior high kids. You might want to
Sounds like a
rethink.
perpetrator to me.
Right? Okay. And so that kind of sets the stage for, okay, not just my background and my field, so IHS and what we're bringing to the table now shows that we're not fringe, but even above and beyond that, we've now just seen that ritual abuse, but satanic ritual abuse is really a thing. Ted Gunderson, head of the FBI's LA division, with 700 personnel underneath him, pretty good credible source. As well as then we can see that lawmakers are considering this. So this is not a fringe thing. This is not satanic panic. This is real. We'll continue to look at some of the clips of LA or New York police detectives that have seen things, just bona fide cases. So it's a real thing. And then MK Ultra. And Diana, here you are, because you at one point in time didn't know any of this, and we received a question. So now we're finally going to be able to let you take the floor now and talk about not just what it was like, but a question that was submitted from our part one was, well, how do you function with all those parts? And so somewhere in the midst of what you want to share now, maybe you can address that. If not, I'll remind you. But as a survivor of the most horrific stuff, the kind of stuff that we just featured, that people at a high level are trying to not let out. The Epstein files have now come out. But even the person that we featured, Diana, you remember being abused by Aquino. And you, on your channel, you speak to that if people want to go on, and you describe it in depth. It's absolutely heinous. So as a survivor of both ritualistic abuse, but even more than that, satanic ritual abuse, and then MK Ultra, I'm privileged to be able to do collaborative work with you because you bring that to the table as someone, a survivor who has been very methodical about her own healing. We showed in part one the credibility of your own work, that objectively you've spoken to how your anger and your depression and your numbness has gotten less and less. Parts are experiencing happiness, experiencing peace.
Yeah.
So talk about whatever you, in terms of whatever came to mind from watching those clips, but then including your journey. What was it like for you? And you have addressed that in the past, but I think it'll be helpful to speak to these.
For me, just I was just going through my life thinking I had an average lower middle class income life, went to high school, I was on the honor roll, joined the army, was a cook, got out, just living my life, thinking, okay, mediocre life, whatever. When I was in my 30s, I was single. I was promiscuous. I was, working and going out and partying like, people do. Nothing outrageous or out of control. I one day had a memory of a man's thigh right here. And it gave me that surge of adrenaline. And I thought, under what circumstance would a man's thigh ever be next to a little girl's face?
So what you're talking about, Diana, is out of the blue, was
very
it?
first, just out of the blue.
You see a man's thigh right in front of your face, so to speak.
Just like right there. And I knew logically that in no circumstance should a man's thigh be next to a little girl's face. And so that was my first whisper that something was wrong. And I also knew that I did not remember the first 11 years of my life. I would talk to my sister about it from time to time. She couldn't remember. And when I was 11 is when my mom divorced my dad. So the entire time we lived with my dad, me and my two sisters can't remember our childhood. And I knew that that was psychologically important, but I didn't know how or why. So that led me into the New Age. I was just looking for, actually, it didn't lead me into the New Age. I was looking for self-help books and books on psychology to try to figure out, okay, what do I not know? Those self-help books led me into the New Age. The New Age led me down different avenues. I never really got my answer. I thought that being spiritual and finding the quote-unquote God that they talk about in the New Age was good, but at a certain point, it was going nowhere. Then I, different life circumstances. I moved 10 times in 4 years. I look back on it now and I realize I was just trying to escape being handled and abused. But at the time, I just thought, oh, I'm looking for a better opportunity. Now I just went blank for a second. After Scientology, I met my husband, and I'm not sure why, because he's a soldier with PTSD, but something about him made me feel safe, even though some outsider looking in at our relationship would say, no, Diana, you need to leave this guy, whatever. But I just felt this God guiding me to stay with him. And over the years, we were together 6 years. We got married because he was withdrawing from SSRIs. He was misdiagnosed and on 4 times the legal adult dosage. So what I thought him withdrawing from that would take a few months or maybe a year or two. When I really studied into it, I realized it could take quite a while. And by the 6th year, his withdrawal from that calmed down. He proposed, I accepted. We were married 5 months later. And for that first year of being married, I felt a peace I had never felt before. And I didn't really understand it. I just thought it had something to do with being cared for, taken care of, and then as we would have sex, intimate relations through our marriage, I would have images pop into my head of like a gang rape situation, except the people were faceless. And I thought, while I'm intimate with my husband, and this is popping in my head, and it would cause me to orgasm. And I went through incredible guilt about that and shame. And I knew enough about Pavlovian conditioning to say, no, Diana, you were sexually abused as a child. It probably has something to do with it. So don't judge yourself. It was Pavlovian conditioning, and it's okay. So I was like, okay. So that went on for a few months. And then all of a sudden, now the face is filled in. And it's my dad, my grandpa, my uncle, cousins, various ages, strange men. Again, when that popped into my head, when I'm intimate with my husband, my body responded. And again, I went through guilt and shame about it internally and had to talk to myself and say, look, it's Pavlovian conditioning. You can't judge yourself for that. You didn't create this. I thought that they were fantasies at first. And I thought, well, what kind of a twisted individual am I to have my body respond to that kind of thing? And I'd always come back to, and I realize now, I think it was a part talking to me, was no, you don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed. It's just a Pavlovian conditioning. Then more months, and audio turned on in the same memory. It's the same memory all along. Faceless now, we have faces now. Audio is turning on, and I'm hearing them talk. So that went on for a while. Again, my body responds. I have the same conversation. Then down the road, black robes appeared, candles, pentagrams on walls and on floors. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
And when you say appeared, meaning on the inside, you're seeing
in the memory, it's the same memory over and over and over. It's just like evolving. And I believe that happened because I was married. My husband was a Christian, and he had told me because he's a Christian, he covers me. I didn't really even understand what that meant. But I look back on it now and I think, okay, his relationship with Christ covered me enough to open that up. So I started diving into trying to learn about symbolism. And at that time, I was also thinking I should be baptized. And I was struggling with it. And I remember I was taking a shower, thinking about being baptized. Well, how can I be baptized if I don't really believe in Jesus? He's a man, yes, but I'd never connected the supernatural stuff to him, didn't really understand it. And in that moment in the shower, I had a memory of Jesus with me. And to this day, I can't tell you what experience it is. But it was just like 2 or 3 seconds, and I went, oh, he's supernatural. And it was gone just as quick as it came. And in that moment, I knew, okay, I can get baptized now. So I asked my husband, he baptized me on Easter of 23. Then
So this is just now what you're referencing. So this is just 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah. I don't want to try and put too much into this. Easter of 23, he baptized me. I asked God that day if he could please help me stop smoking weed. I'd really appreciate it. Well, by the 4th of July, he did. My stash ran out, and I felt no need to go get any more, no compulsion, no desire, no withdrawal. I was like, wow, thank you, God. I mean, I was feeling guilty smoking pot because I'd just been baptized, but I hadn't worked that out yet. But Jesus took care of it for me. It's the 4th of July. Hadn't smoked any weed. Went to my sister's house on Labor Day. What is that? 4 weeks later. Had a little bit there. Realized, no, I don't want to do this. I just spent the past, 4 or 6 weeks completely peaceful and sober. So I threw everything away there. That was September, Labor Day. And by October, my memories turned on. So the combination of learning and understanding symbology, by October, now I'm starting to look up, okay, what kind of abuse exists with black robes and candles? I didn't even know what to call it. Satanic ritual abuse popped up. I look for different I've run into other survivors talking about this, kind of like a punch in the gut going, oh my God, is that me? And slowly after watching I'd say maybe 6 or 8 different survivors, I ran into the Imagination podcast, more survivors, some getting more and more validation, more and more memories. I start sketching. And Jon was on Emma's show. I run into Jon and he's explaining how DID and MPD work and how to heal from it, and that there's a thing called parts. And then I contacted Jon and started working with him, and 1,237 parts later, yes, one more since our last interview. How do I function with all of them? In the beginning, not well, not comfortably, but now, 2 years after starting therapy with Jon and figuring out my own system, I don't know what you want to call it, pretty smoothly, pretty comfortably. I'm pretty peaceful. I still have memories that come. I still get woken up in the middle of the night with surges of adrenaline. They're not as big and huge as they used to be before, but it'll still wake me up. But the process that I use works effectively and efficiently for me. It takes the part from a nebulous state, this memory. I don't know if you'd want to call that nebulous, but I know it's a part. I put it through my system. It gets existence, a new life. Its story is told. We talk to Jon about it. I figure out what lies I need to counteract and find the truth to counteract that. And once that's done, I get to have, I shouldn't say I get to have, but me and the part get to exist side by side without conflict, without well, at first there is upset, but part of the process is doing TED Talks, venting off the energy. And once that negative energy and emotion goes, then the positive, fulfilling, loving peace, energy, and rest comes, and we just exist together. Most of them are quiet, unless a trigger comes up. And when the trigger happens, I check in to say, okay, who is that? What's going on? We talk about it, we vent it, and then peace and rest come again. So they're not ever gone from me, and they're not all 1,237 talking to me at the same time. They pop their head up when they need help, or I pop my head down to ask them questions. So we just coexist together consciously. That's how I do. That's how I function. It's I'd love to get into the details of my process and what I do, but we're going to do that down the road. And my journals and sessions on my channel will show you that.
Diana, can you remind people, we have a link, and I'll put a link in again, but do you want to remind people or bring it up?
The channel is Warlindi, WARLYNDI. It's a scramble of my name. Warlindi, my website is warlindi.com, Warlindi on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, X, and Facebook. And I have my TED Talks there, journals and sessions. I read books related to SRA or Satanism, understanding Satanism, not the act of performing Satanism. And just go through my process. I would recommend anybody that's new, start at the beginning to understand the context of what you're seeing. If you jump in the middle or at the end or the present day, you're going to lose a lot of context and you're not going to understand what you're hearing. And this isn't a plug for you to, watch all my videos. It's just necessary because I started off, I feel like a basket case. First confused, then turning into a basket case because I got all these parts coming up. I don't know what to do with them. That was very stressful. But the process, and I won't even say I created it, they're just ideas that popped into my head. And it's my belief it was God's way of showing me how to handle it. And I remember one night, I was praying to him and I said, is it really that easy? And the response I got was like this glowing smile, like, yes, it can be that easy. And I was like, wow, okay, I'll do it. And it's just a logical way to organize things and ask questions and to see your parts outside of your head on paper or the computer, making them real and solid. So I don't know where to go from here.
Well, you answered this question last time, but somebody may be watching this for the first time, and then they'll go and watch part one. So if I were to ask you, or someone, a naysayer on the sidelines, so to speak, were to say, well, wait a second, you got how many parts? Over 1,200 parts? And it sounds like you're going schizophrenic, and that this whole thing took a sane person and made her crazy, and now she's happy in her delusion. She must be a bag lady now. She must be reclusive. She must have panic attacks. She must be out of touch with reality. Her life has been ruined because she went from somebody with a single mind. Now her mind has been shattered, who can't even function. It must have ruined her marriage. This is wrecking families. What would you say?
I would say no, you're absolutely wrong. 2 years of therapy, granted it's been 3 years of memories, but 2 years of therapy, I feel more peaceful and at rest and empowered. My marriage is so much better. I have everything that I need and want, a relationship with God that's never been deeper in my life. Higher respect for my husband and his authority as the spiritual head of our household. Because I worked for 35 years of my life as a single woman, so I'm used to making my own decisions, and I'm going to trust myself over you. All of that has, I don't know. I'm not schizophrenic. I'm pretty rational, organized.
Are you able to get out of bed in the morning?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And before, it used to be when I got out of bed, I'd start battle planning my day. Okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in this particular order and get all this stuff done. And now it's, okay, God, what would you like me to do first, second, third, and fourth? And I found that his way of guiding me through the day actually helps the puzzle pieces fall together a whole lot easier. As to where if I was in control and doing it my way, or, very logical and linear, but he's shown me how I don't have to be logical and linear to I'm still in this new process. It's been a few months, but no, God is present with me all the time. My husband and I are very peaceful. I don't think we've had an argument for months and months and months. I can't even remember when the last one was.
Well, what's the big deal about that? So you guys are kind of coexisting together.
Oh, we're not just coexisting, we're enjoying each other now. I would say before we coexisted and, had marital relations and whatever, but there was a lot of fighting because of my unknown and amnesic anxiety would trigger his veteran PTSD. And so we're in constant clash. And it's gone now. Well, we talked about that in the last episode. So no, I'm not schizophrenic. I think my life is the best it's ever been and the least confusing. I still have memories that I need to puzzle together, but it's not upsetting that the thought of approaching it. When the memories come, they come and I know how to handle it and get to that peace and happiness state. So let's say I have 1,500 parts and I've only discovered 1,237. That's still, 300 and however many parts to discover. because a majority of them are peaceful and happy, the discovery of these new ones makes approaching them easier. That there's not, in the beginning of it, it's like, oh my God, there's another thing. Oh my God, there's another thing. Now it's like, okay, I guess there's more. Whatever comes. God's going to bring it in order. He's going to bring it, and we know what to do and how to do it. And ultimately, 6 months, a year down the road, these new reveals will have their peace and happiness. And maybe this will go on for the rest of my life. I don't know, but I just had a memory a couple days ago where Jon will know what this means, but my file cabinet part was the part that held all my memories. In a file cabinet, literally, in my brain. At that time, I asked file cabinet, I said, could you give the memories to all the parts and let them have their memories? Because the part was separated from the actual recorded memory and put it in a file cabinet, and that's what that part did, was store the memory. Well, she gave it back to the part, so the part now has it. The part can reveal when it wants to. Well, at that time, there was a portion of them that did not want their memories back yet, the parts. And I said, well, that's okay. When you're ready, you're ready. I said, instead of it being in this file cabinet, because we live in this beautiful place called Lake City with forest and mountains, I said, how about if we just tuck them into a tree? And they'll be in a beautiful place, and when we're ready for them, we'll go get them. They're like, okay. Jon, I forgot all about that for a year and a half. But it popped into my head yesterday. I went, that's right, the tree. The tree has files. And I said to the parts, I said, are you ready for me to open the tree? Can I give you your files back? And they went, yeah, I think we're ready now. And so I think I got a bulk coming now. But so it's just, I don't know, just being in communication with them and embracing them and loving them. And how do I function? I do, because I interact with us as a group. It started off as a scattered, crazed, group of non-collaboration, but now there's collaboration and harmony and a desire to all be on the same page. And and a new part revealing may not be on the same page, but ultimately through the healing, through the process, through talking about it, through learning the true information, venting their feelings, they're like, oh, I get it now. That's how you're peaceful and happy. So just putting them through this system, I don't know, it becomes automatic for me now. In the beginning, it was a bit of a challenge, but because I've done it 1,237 times, it's pretty ingrained and simple. Do I still get body memories? Yes. And as I said, I still get memories, but I'm not bouncing off the walls or in confusion or at a loss of what to do. I know how to handle it. And I've always got Jon's ear there if I get knotted up with something. And generally, those tangles and knots have to do with the Bible, God, and Jesus. The secular stuff I can figure out generally by myself. It's the biblical stuff that I generally need help with now. In the beginning, I needed help with everything, but now it's the spiritual piece, the Christian piece of the pie. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, and if someone assumes that, okay, and part of that peacefulness is how many meds are you on? You must be on some Haldol.
None. I've never.
No, come on. There's got to be. We probably listen to Haldol and Trazodone and.
No, never. I will admit that I smoked weed through my life to cope, and I am smoking cigarettes today. I don't want to be, but when the time's right, I'll quit smoking. But no, I'm not on any medications. I never have been, except for one time when I went through menopause and lost a lot of, menstrual blood. My doctor put me on iron pills. So the pills that I'm on now are all vitamins and minerals, vitamin C, D, zinc, iron, a multivitamin, and B12. And
So
I've taken those for years.
So are you trying to tell us that you're not on any psychiatric medication?
No. And I'm completely sober, except for nicotine. I will suggest do not watch network television, network news. Do not listen to music unless it is, I don't know why I want to bite my lip on this, but Christian. Because the entertainment industry is designed and embedded with triggers to keep your memories down. Billboards, all that stuff. I'm lucky enough I don't have to go to work. And I don't feel a need to go out much except once a week to go shopping. So I don't put into my mind things that are going to continuously trigger me. Television, network television, and all that stuff, what I watch when I need to have the TV or want to have the TV on. I guess it's a need. I think everyone's addicted to a screen. But I watch YouTube channels about SRA, ex-Satanists, ex-New Agers, homesteading, gardening, to not have the commercials, the music, and the stuff that is embedded into mainstream media to keep us triggered. It's intentionally there, particularly Disney stuff. So, but it's all over the place. Thrillers, horror movies, all of it. You've got to wean yourself off of that. Because as long as you keep getting, and those triggers are telling you, push your memory down, push your memory down. If your memory keeps surfacing and you reach for it, a trigger is going to tell a part inside to sabotage you, to stub your toe or cut your finger when you're cooking or whatever, to immediately move your mind away from the memory to deal with your stub toe or your cut finger or whatever. There's a lot more to that too, but you've got to get away from the triggers. The triggers are making you not remember, or they're going to trigger you to self-harm, suicide, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, etc. So it's just different things I've learned along the way that help. And no, I'm not on meds and I'm not crazy. I'm more peaceful and have more clarity than I ever have in my life. Truly.
And Diana, that's why what we are bringing now to the public, in terms of a new model, I'm very excited about and excited to collaborate with you about, because you've been the one working through your memories and doing so in a way that is creating a model. So we have the conceptual model, but then the practical outworking of that. You've been doing an amazing job, and we want others to find the same freedom, the same success, the same healing. And there's no shortcut, but tell you what, there's a roadmap.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to be, I'm 60, I'll be 61 in August, and I don't want to be 81 still confused. So, and I'm not confused now. So If it takes 2, 3, 5 years to get through 98% of it, that's okay. It's not going to take 30 years like it would in a regular psychiatric situation with drugs, with whatever, all the crazy. So it's doable. It's totally doable.
Well, Diana, thank you. We will pick it up at this point with part 3, as we will look at some more about SRA, so people have a sense that it's not just in the past, it's still going on now in the different forms. And then also we will briefly touch on MK Ultra, but people can go onto YouTube and just type those words in, and there's plenty. So those that want to say that MK Ultra wasn't a thing, they have a reason why they're denying it, because they cannot, in this day and age, be that ignorant. So perpetrators and perp apologists, partners in crime, so to speak, in one way or the other, not only do they need their internet assessed as far as their usage, what they're accessing online, but they are driven to try to say, this isn't real. What you have gone through isn't real, but what you've gone through is very real, and the healing is very real as well.
Yes, for sure. I don't know why I want to add this in, is just, I think a survivor needs to understand as well, as scary as this comes from the top down. If you perceive that it's just your neighborhood, just your family, maybe just this state, you're going to limit your ability to comprehend it. It's big and it's ugly, but you know what? We faced that, and we faced it down, and we survived it. All you're doing now is looking at it again, feeling it again, yes. But your paradigm of how you view the world is going to change. It will, but in that change, you will feel empowered. You'll feel strong, confident. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm ready to take on the perpetrators. And that's part of what we're doing here, I think.
That's exactly right.
I'm in the battle.
There you go. Well, Diana, thank you. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
We'll look forward to part 3 coming up.
All righty.
There you go.
See you next time.
See you next time.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, Jon Uhler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, to schedule a personal consultation with Jon, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with Jon, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.